Get back to work right now or you're fired. I had reserved an expensive steak dinner for the new hires' welcome party, but I was the only one who showed up. Susan, the president's daughter, laughed loudly on the other end of the line. She must have wanted to make me squirm. When I remained silent, Susan chuckled and said, "An old hag like you is always in the way. You're an eyesore, so why don't you just disappear already?" Despite her persistent arrogance, I burst out laughing. "Wow, Susan, you really have such a charming personality, don't you?" I quipped sarcastically. "Huh? At least I'm better than you," Susan retorted. I couldn't stand working with someone like her anymore. I had made up my mind. "I'm going to submit my resignation letter right now," I declared firmly. "Do whatever you want," Susan dismissively replied. For the rest of her life, she would undoubtedly regret this moment. Because Susan had just opened the gates of hell. My name is Linda, and I'm 45 years old this year. The company I joined as a fresh graduate was called Smith Group. Smith Group mainly deals in wholesale food distribution and also operates restaurants. It's a large corporation now, but when I first started, it was a small company with fewer than 10 employees. As a result, my job as a newbie was that of a jack of all trades. I worked in sales, visiting local restaurants without appointments and pitching our company's ingredients for their menus. Once the sales calls were done, I tackled various internal tasks. From payroll calculations to accounting data entry, my responsibilities were extensive and diverse. I often worked late into the night, but I managed to complete all my daily tasks somehow. As I continued to pour my heart into the job, more than 20 years passed by. Smith Group has grown significantly and now employs over 300 people. Every year, when we hold seminars for new graduates, we're flooded with applicants eager to join the company. Over the past 2 decades, the internal operations have become more specialized and compartmentalized. The administrative work I used to handle is now divided among the accounting and general affairs departments. Even the sales division has been split into wholesale and restaurant sales, each with its own dedicated team. Since the responsibilities vary by department, employees regularly rotate positions, gaining experience in different aspects of the business over the years. As I reflect on this, I can't help but feel a deep sense of nostalgia, realizing just how much times have changed. The days when I used to handle a variety of tasks in a single day now feel like a distant dream. Over these past 20 years, I've undergone changes myself. I met a wonderful man outside of work and got married. We were blessed with 2 adorable boys. They're incredibly cute but also quite a handful, and I struggled to keep up with their mischievous antics. Working while raising young children proved to be an immense challenge. After taking maternity leave and parental leave, I returned to work and quickly realized the difficulties of balancing child-rearing and a career. The first hurdle was childcare. I was fortunate enough to secure a spot for my kids at a childcare center, and I returned to the office with a mix of excitement and apprehension. I was determined to make up for the time I had been away on leave and once again excel at my job, just as I had before. However, the path ahead was far from smooth. No sooner had I returned to work when I realized my limitation by the incessant demands of the childcare center. As I juggled my workload, the phone calls from the childcare center came in like clockwork, week after week. Each time the phone rang, my heart sank with disappointment. The reason for the calls was always the same. My child had developed a fever, and they needed me to come pick them up immediately. Every time this happened, I had to apologize to my colleagues and beg them to cover the rest of my work for me. I'm eternally grateful to my single coworkers who, despite their obvious annoyance, always stepped in to help. As this pattern repeated itself over and over, I gradually felt my energy and enthusiasm draining away. No matter how badly I wanted to work the same hours as everyone else, it simply wasn't possible. Even without the constant summons from the childcare center, the time I could dedicate to my job was inherently limited. Due to the restricted hours of childcare, I couldn't work overtime. If I did, I wouldn't be able to pick up my kids at the designated time. As a result, the amount of work I could handle was noticeably less compared to my colleagues. It was an uncomfortable feeling, knowing there was such a discrepancy in workload among employees of the same rank. I was deeply troubled by this dilemma. I couldn't devote any more time to my job than I already was. Yet, it was impossible for me to complete the volume of work that was expected of me. Finally, I made the difficult decision to resign from the company. But then, one fateful day, the president called me into his office, and I found myself listening to words I never could have anticipated. "It's true that you may not be able to work as many hours as other employees, but we'd be in a real bind if she weren't here with us," the president said earnestly. He went on to passionately convey just how much the company needed me. I was deeply moved by his persuasive words. I had no idea that they considered me to be such an indispensable part of the team. Knowing that the president valued me so highly motivated me to work even harder for him and the company. After discussing it with the president and HR, I transitioned from a full-time employee to a contract worker. As a full-time employee, I would have had to work overtime and take on a larger workload. However, as a contract worker, I could leave at the end of my shift without putting in extra hours. I no longer had to feel out of place or uncomfortable at work just because I was a full-time employee like everyone else. Becoming a contract worker helped ease my mind considerably. As a contract worker, I was assigned to the customer service call center department. Every day, I fielded a wide variety of calls, which gave me a strong sense of fulfillment. I also discovered the joy of engaging in conversations with customers. I've been working in this department ever since. Now, even my youngest is in the upper grades of elementary school, and I no longer get called away from work due to their fevers. I'm determined to keep giving my all at work. With renewed resolve, I threw myself into my job. But just as I had steeled my determination, a major event occurred that shook me to my core. A new employee was assigned to my department. Starting today, Susan will be joining the customer service call center department. Everyone, please make her feel welcome, Director Martinez announced, introducing the young woman. "I'm Susan, the president's daughter. I graduated from Harvard University. I'm kind of a big deal, even if I don't look like it. Since I'm the future president, I expect all of you to treat me with the utmost respect," Susan said with a laugh. Susan's introduction caused a commotion among the staff, and I could see that everyone was quite shaken up. It's no wonder, really. If someone suddenly greeted you with such an arrogant attitude, it's only natural to react that way. But Susan was the president's daughter. So, everyone remained silent, unable to say a word. Amid the awkward atmosphere, Director Martinez asked Susan, "So, who would you like to be your mentor? You're an important employee, Susan, so feel free to choose anyone you'd like." Normally, a mentor would be chosen based on their experience and knowledge. Everyone must have been thinking the same thing, but no one dared to say it out loud. "Well, let's see," Susan said, scanning the room. I absolutely did not want to be stuck mentoring Susan. As everyone averted their gaze, my eyes accidentally met Susan's. "What about that person?" Susan asked, pointing at me and turning to Director Martinez. "You mean Linda? She's the only contract employee in our department. She's been here for years, so she's got seniority, if nothing else," Director Martinez replied, emphasizing my employment status to Susan. There seemed to be a hint of malice in the way he introduced me. Susan let out a nasty laugh. Is that so? So, in a sea of full-time employees, there's just one lone contract worker. She must be pretty incompetent. All right, I think I'll pick her. She seems like she'll be easy to boss around, Susan declared. Excuse me. I gave Susan a baffled look, taken aback by her incredibly rude attitude. However, Director Martinez didn't seem to pay any mind to my reaction. It's true that Linda has fallen off the elite track. She doesn't work overtime or take on any significant tasks. She's a burden on the company, really. I think she's the perfect choice for you to order around, he said to Susan with a smile, spouting utter nonsense. The other employees, not wanting to get involved in this mess, made no move to help me. Everyone pretended not to notice what was happening. Linda, make sure you don't show any disrespect to Susan, Director Martinez warned. I understand, I replied reluctantly. And just like that, I found myself assigned as Susan's mentor. I later learned that Susan had been hired through the president's connections. Apparently, she'd been offered the job without even going through an interview or written exam. I wonder how things are going to turn out, I muttered to myself, shrugging my shoulders as I envisioned a future fraught with difficulties. From that point on, Susan did whatever she pleased. For starters, she refused to answer any calls, whether they were from within the company or outside. Our customer service call center department primarily handles incoming calls from external customers. At Smith Group, customer service is a top priority, which is why the customer service call center department has the highest number of assigned employees. Our department is located smack in the middle of the office floor, and when all the customer service representatives are occupied with calls, employees from other departments step in to provide support. It doesn't matter if they're from sales or general affairs. That's why answering the phone is the most crucial skill for new hires to master. However, Susan completely disregards this vital aspect of the job. When I try to teach her proper phone etiquette, she can't be bothered. I hand her the talk script, a manual that outlines the predetermined conversation flow for handling calls, but she doesn't even attempt to look at it. Why should I, the future president, have to answer phones? Isn't that a job for the incompetent? Susan scoffs. By incompetent, she means me. Susan has started referring to me as incompetent, echoing Director Martinez's comment about me being a burden on the company. This is beyond disrespectful. At first, I try to protest, but Director Martinez immediately shuts me down. According to him, I mustn't upset Susan. And just like that, Director Martinez starts calling me incompetent too, following Susan's lead. Hey, incompetent! Don't bother Susan. The phone is ringing, so hurry up and answer it. He barks at me. Yes, I reply, reluctantly giving up on trying to guide Susan. Susan and Director Martinez seem to get along swimmingly. Director Martinez, I can't get this to work, Susan calls out. Our company uses time cards to track attendance, but for some reason, Susan can't seem to punch in correctly. It looks like the machine isn't turned on. I'll switch it on right away, and then you should be able to punch in. Director Martinez explains, rushing over to Susan's side the moment she calls for him. Thank you so much, Director Martinez. Phew, all that effort has made me thirsty, Susan says, glancing at Director Martinez. Delighted, he suggests. Well then, let's go to the break room and have some coffee together. It's my treat. Thank you. That would be wonderful, Susan gushes. And just like that, a mere 5 minutes after arriving at work, Susan disappears into the break room with Director Martinez. This becomes an almost daily occurrence. There's no way I can put up with this situation. One day, I couldn't take it anymore and confronted Susan. "Susan, I'll compromise and let you call me incompetent. But please, at least do your job properly." As soon as the words left my mouth, Director Martinez turned pale. "How dare you speak to Susan that way? Take it back, immediately," he sputtered in a panic. Susan let out an irritated sigh. "This company is going to be mine someday, you know? And yet, a mere contract employee has the audacity to talk down to me. That's it, I'm firing you, you incompetent fool. Get out of this office, right now." "What?" I stood there, stunned by Susan's outburst. No matter how much of a president's daughter she might be, there's no way she has the authority to fire an employee. This is completely absurd. Even though I knew that, I couldn't help but worry. What if she really could? I have children to support, and next year my oldest will be taking entrance exams. With all the expenses piling up, I couldn't afford to lose my job now. As I stood there, unable to respond, Susan let out a mocking laugh. "If you apologize sincerely right this instant, I might just forgive you," she said, looking down on me with disdain. "Linda, apologize to her, right now," Director Martinez demanded, trying to force me to beg for forgiveness. "Hurry up," he barked in a harsh tone. Our coworkers had started to gather, watching the scene unfold. Susan crossed her arms, a nasty smirk playing on her lips. She was clearly relishing this moment. The last thing I wanted to do was apologize to someone like her. But I couldn't risk getting fired, not now. Feeling powerless to defy Director Martinez, I slowly bowed my head. I'm sorry," I mumbled, offering Susan a heartfelt apology in a small voice. Susan watched me, a look of satisfaction on her face. "I'm glad you understand. Well, I'm tired, so I'm going to take a break." With that, Susan started walking towards the break room. "I'll come with you," Director Martinez eagerly volunteered. As Susan was leaving, she leaned in close to me, still bowing in heartfelt apology, and whispered, "How pathetic, an old hag like you groveling like this. Serves you right." I felt tears of frustration welling up in my eyes. This kind of treatment was absolutely unforgivable. After Susan left the floor, I returned to my work, tears streaming down my face. It's been a month since then. Every day has been a living hell. Susan continues to do whatever she pleases, and Director Martinez doesn't reprimand her at all. In fact, he just lets her get away with everything. Each time Susan does something outrageous, I give her a baffled look, but after what happened the other day, I don't dare say anything. Susan takes every opportunity to harass me. "You're fired, you worthless fool." This has become her favorite phrase. Then one day, I receive an order from Director Martinez. "You want me to book a venue for the new employee welcome party?" "That's right. Unlike you, the rest of us are busy, you incompetent. I'm sure you've got plenty of free time, don't you?" Director Martinez said dismissively. Our company holds a welcome party for new hires about 2 months after they join. Since the probationary period lasts 6 months, it's also meant to encourage them to work hard for the remaining time. Rather than a typical ceremony where everyone gathers in a conference room to listen to a speech from the president, our company has a unique style where we deepen friendships over a meal. Back in my day, we didn't have anything like this, so I'm a little envious of the new employees. Understood. Do you have any preferences for the restaurant? I asked. Director Martinez paused for a moment, as if deep in thought, before replying. If I had to choose, I'd say steak. The other new hires are all men, so they'd probably prefer meat. Steak it is. I'll get right on it. With that, I began my search for a suitable restaurant. After much deliberation, I finally decided to make a reservation at a high-end steakhouse. At this restaurant, some of the cuts of meat were priced based on market value, and you could order them by the slice. I thought everyone would be satisfied with such a prestigious establishment. When I informed Director Martinez of my choice, he replied, "I'll contact the higher-ups and the new hires. You're all set." Understood. Thank you very much, I said. I made the mistake of trusting Director Martinez's words at that time. This would lead to a major incident. On the day of the welcome party, I thought to myself, something's not right. Even though it was the scheduled time, no one had arrived. The restaurant staff looked just as confused as I was, glancing at me with puzzled expressions. Suddenly, my cell phone rang. Hello? I answered. How's it feel to enjoy a steak all by your lonesome? The voice on the other end taunted. To my shock, it was Susan. How did you get this number? And what about the welcome party? I asked, bewildered. I had no recollection of ever giving Susan my private cell phone number. Moreover, the time for the welcome party had already passed. As I stood there, at a loss for words, Susan laughed and said, I got your number from Director Martinez. And don't worry, the welcome party is well underway, at a different venue. Sure enough, I could hear the lively chatter and commotion of a party in the background. This is horrible. You tricked me, I said, biting my lip. Director Martinez must have conspired with Susan to deceive me. Their behavior was incredibly immature, especially for working professionals. Get back to work right now or you're fired. Susan barked into the phone, laughing loudly. She must have wanted to make me squirm. When I remained silent, Susan chuckled and said, An old hag like you is always in the way. You're an eyesore, so why don't you just disappear already? If someone suddenly spoke to you with such an arrogant attitude, it's only natural to react that way. Wow, Susan, you really have such a charming personality, don't you? I quipped sarcastically. Huh? At least I'm better than you, Susan retorted. I couldn't stand working with someone like her anymore. And Director Martinez, who was supposed to be my superior, was just as awful. Having reached my breaking point, I made a decision. I'm going to submit my resignation letter right now, I declared firmly. Do whatever you want, Susan dismissively replied. For the rest of her life, she would undoubtedly regret this moment. Because Susan had just opened the gates of hell. I sincerely apologized to the restaurant staff. A private room for a party of 20 had been abruptly canceled. I was prepared to face their anger, but instead, they sympathized with me and waived the cancellation fee. It probably helped that they had witnessed my phone conversation with Susan just moments ago. Linda, you didn't do anything wrong. The one at fault is that spoiled president's daughter. So please don't let it get to you. The restaurant staff reassured me, showing genuine concern. Thank you so much, I said, feeling tears welling up at their kindness. At the same time, my fury towards Susan grew even stronger. After everything she had done, she needed to face consequences. Of course, the same went for Director Martinez, who had been complicit in Susan's scheming. I had no intention of ever forgiving those two. I returned to the office and began writing my resignation letter. I dated it for today. In the letter, I stated that my resignation would be effective immediately. I placed the completed resignation letter on Director Martinez's desk. However, I couldn't risk him simply ignoring the letter I had gone to the trouble of writing. So, I left a copy on someone else's desk as well. Then, I started cleaning out my own desk. A handful of employees who hadn't gone to the welcome party were still in the office, working overtime. Some of them looked at me with concern, but I deliberately ignored them. Disregarding their stares, I gathered my personal belongings and put them in my bag. "Thank you for everything," I quietly murmured before leaving the company for good. The next day, I was at home. A glance at the clock told me that the workday had already begun. So, I'm unemployed now, I mused, feeling oddly relaxed. But my tranquility was short-lived. My cell phone started ringing incessantly. Checking the caller ID, I saw that it was Susan. There were also several missed calls from Director Martinez. "Just as I thought," I said to myself, a smile playing on my lips. The phone kept ringing, even as I ignored it. Still, I continued to disregard the calls. Perhaps realizing that I wouldn't answer my personal phone, they started calling from the office line instead. It seemed that Susan and the others had no intention of giving up. Even if I kept ignoring the calls, the phone would undoubtedly keep ringing off the hook. "I guess I have no choice," I muttered quietly, getting ready to head to the office. "Good morning," I greeted as I stepped into the company. The moment I showed my face, Susan and Director Martinez appeared, their expressions livid. "What the hell have you done?" "Thanks to you, our company is in a huge mess," Susan shouted, her voice full of desperation as she confronted me. I responded to Susan's outburst as if nothing had happened. "What do you mean?" "Yesterday, I told you that I was going to submit my resignation letter. You said, do whatever you want, didn't you, Susan?" Recalling yesterday's events, Susan stumbled over her words. Then, in the next instant, she cried out in distress. "I had no idea. I didn't know you were in charge of handling complaints. Thanks to that, the phone's been ringing off the hook all morning with people asking for you," Susan exclaimed. Director Martinez chimed in, looking equally perplexed. "Even when I try to handle the calls, they insist on speaking to Linda. The other employees can't even do their regular work because of this. Please, just go back to answering the phones." I had to suppress a laugh at this predictable turn of events. Our company's customer service department receives calls from all sorts of customers every day. Director Martinez had only joined our department 6 months ago, so he had no idea what kind of calls I usually handled. He probably assumed that I took the same regular calls as the other employees. However, the reality was quite different. The calls I handled were essentially from complainers. I was responsible for taking the calls that the other employees couldn't handle. Originally, I started working at Smith Group as a jack-of-all-trades. As a result, I had comprehensive knowledge about the company's products and operations. Most of the complaints stemmed from the lack of knowledge of the employees answering the phones. They couldn't provide immediate answers to customers' inquiries. Consequently, they couldn't offer solutions right away. This frustrated the customers, leading to serious complaints. However, I could quickly determine which department to consult for each complaint. The time it took to resolve issues was much shorter, and customers' complaints were quelled in no time. Moreover, these customers often grew even fonder of our company. They also took a liking to me, and whenever they had an issue, they would call and ask for me specifically. But now that I had resigned, none of that mattered anymore. I fixed Director Martinez with a sharp glare. "I clearly stated in my resignation letter that my last day was yesterday. Did you even bother to read it thoroughly?" Flustered, Director Martinez pulled out the resignation letter I had written from his breast pocket. "You mean this?" But I haven't accepted your resignation yet. It seemed that Director Martinez was operating under a grave misconception. I firmly conveyed my stance. What I submitted was not a resignation request, but a resignation letter. It takes effect the moment the company receives it. I don't believe it requires your approval, does it? Ugh. Director Martinez faltered, at a loss for words, as if I had hit a sore spot. And another thing, I said, glancing over at Susan. What? Susan glared back at me, not backing down. Hasn't Susan been constantly threatening to fire me at every turn? I apologized sincerely before because I didn't want to lose my job. But I won't be making any heartfelt apologies anymore, so go ahead and fire me if you want. Now that I had made up my mind to resign, I was no longer afraid of Susan. As I stared her down, Susan flinched slightly. Then, ignoring my comment, she said, "Fine, I won't mention firing you anymore. Now hurry up and answer the phones. The other employees are blaming me, and I'm in a bind here." Looking around, I could see that everyone, regardless of their department, was scrambling to handle the influx of calls. The customers who specifically asked for me tended to be rather quirky. They probably wouldn't hang up so easily. Meanwhile, calls from regular customers kept pouring in. As a result, the entire office seemed to be in a state of chaos. I informed Susan, "I've already resigned. The fact that Director Martinez has the resignation letter I wrote means the company has received it, right? Then it's not my problem anymore." You can't be serious. Then what are we supposed to do about this situation? Susan shouted, growing hysteric. I don't know. Figure it out yourselves. I replied firmly. Suddenly, for some inexplicable reason, Director Martinez started tearing up the resignation letter I had written. What? That's... I couldn't hide my shock at Director Martinez's actions. As I stood there, bewildered, Director Martinez finished shredding the letter and began to laugh. There, the resignation letter has been destroyed, so Linda's resignation is void. Now that you understand, hurry up and get back to answering the phones. Susan, who had also been caught off guard by Director Martinez's behavior, smirked at me once she realized his intentions. Too bad things didn't go according to your plan. Now, be a good girl and answer the phones. Susan ordered me. These two were truly beyond help. They both had this smug look on their faces, as if they had bested me. As I was contemplating how to settle this once and for all, a voice rang out. That's enough. It was the president. Mr. President! Dad? Director Martinez and Susan were shocked by the president's sudden appearance. The president was usually so busy that he rarely spent time at the main office during the day. He swiftly pulled out an envelope. I also found a resignation letter from Linda on my desk. What is the meaning of this, Director Martinez? Director Martinez looked flustered, trying to come up with an excuse to give the president. Well, you see, Mr. President, this is... But he seemed to be at a loss for words, unable to come up with a plausible explanation. The president pressed further, putting Director Martinez in an even tighter spot. The reasons for her resignation were written out in great detail. It says here that you forced her to apologize sincerely for absurd reasons. That's a clear violation of compliance regulations. What do you have to say for yourself? Mr. President, I am deeply sorry, Director Martinez said, bowing profusely to the president. He looked cornered, his face pale and beads of sweat forming on his forehead. The president regarded Director Martinez with a look of exasperation. Then he turned his glare on Susan. It seems you've been doing whatever you please, Susan. I hired you out of pity when you said you'd been fired from another company. I'm sorry. Susan hung her head and began apologizing to the president. As it turned out, Susan wasn't actually a candidate for the next president. The president had simply hired her out of sympathy. Confirming this fact, the president spoke. Our company values merit above all else. We have no need for people who don't do their jobs properly. It's not Linda who should be leaving the company, but you too. At the president's declaration, Director Martinez looked like he was about to cry. Mr. President, please, I beg you. I still have a mortgage to pay off on my house, he pleaded, clinging to the president. Susan also desperately tried to reason with the president. Dad, I'll work really hard from now on. Please don't talk about firing me. But the president wouldn't budge. And another thing, the president continued. That high-end steakhouse you took it upon yourselves to cancel? It's one of the restaurant brands our company operates, the president revealed. What? Susan looked stunned. I spoke to her, exasperated. You don't even know your own father's company? That restaurant is one of the brands we're really focusing on. That's why I made the reservation. In fact, that particular steakhouse was slated for expansion, and it was currently the main restaurant brand our company was putting the most effort into. Since it was one of our company's restaurants, the staff had been gracious enough to overlook the sudden cancellation. Director Martinez originally worked in the General Affairs Department, so it was understandable if his knowledge of the restaurant brands was limited. But Susan had gone so far as to boast about being a candidate for the next president. Normally, you'd expect someone in that position to be familiar with their company's brands and main products. I had no idea, Susan muttered under her breath. Because of this last-minute cancellation, all the ingredients the restaurant had purchased for the event will go to waste. Not to mention the labor costs for the staff who were supposed to be on duty to accommodate the reservation I made. If the reservation hadn't been in place, they might have been able to accept bookings from other customers. Susan, you rendered all of that meaningless. I chided her in a stern tone. Hearing my words, Susan turned deathly pale. Her selfish actions had caused trouble for her own father. The president, looking appalled, said, "We don't need employees who lack the drive to improve. Do as you please." His statement hinted at their dismissal. The president wasn't one to change his mind so easily. Realizing this, Director Martinez and Susan redirected their focus towards me. Linda, can't you put in a good word for us with Dad? If you agree to come back to the company, everything can go back to normal, Susan said, approaching me with a smile. That's right. Linda, tell him that I'm an essential part of this company. Then you can keep working here like before, Director Martinez suggested, grinning at me. I smiled back at the two of them. Mistaking my reaction for compliance, Susan and Director Martinez returned my smile. But reality wasn't so kind. As long as incompetent people like you are here, I will never come back to this company, I declared firmly. Yes. I'm so sorry, Susan and Director Martinez said, their shoulders slumped in defeat. After that, both Susan and Director Martinez were fired from the company. I heard that Director Martinez's wife had served him with divorce papers. As it turned out, Susan and Director Martinez had been romantically involved. Their affair had apparently come to light during this whole fiasco, and Director Martinez's wife had found out. Although Director Martinez had apologized to his wife repeatedly, she had packed her bags and moved back in with her parents. Now, he was embroiled in a bitter dispute with his wife over the divorce and the compensation settlement. However, having been fired from the company, Director Martinez was strapped for cash. On top of that, he still had a mortgage to pay off on his house. Given the circumstances, he seemed to be in a truly miserable situation. Director Martinez had pleaded with me countless times. "Linda, please ask the president to let me return to Smith Group." But I had no intention of ever forgiving Director Martinez. So lately, I had been ignoring his calls. I also heard rumors that Susan was in dire straits. Apparently, she had been kicked out of her family home because of this incident. This whole mess is my fault for spoiling my daughter. I've decided to cut ties with Susan. The president confided in me. With no home and no job, Susan seemed to be in a truly desperate situation. I had received numerous calls from Susan on my cell phone. "Please, convince Dad to change his mind. This whole thing started because you went and submitted that resignation letter on your own, didn't it? I didn't do anything wrong." Susan insisted, urging me to mediate with the president on her behalf. But I had no desire to act as a go-between for her. "This is the result of your compliance violations, isn't it, Susan? You caused a lot of trouble for the company, too. Don't you think you should reflect on your actions a little?" I told her dispassionately. But Susan, unwilling to accept this, tried to argue with me. "But still, I decided to be direct with her. And do you really think you have time to be leisurely calling me? I heard that Director Martinez's wife found out about you, and she's planning to sue for even more compensation in the divorce settlement." As soon as I said that, Susan's voice trembled with fear. "Never mind. Bye," she said abruptly and hung up the phone. Despite being sued by Director Martinez's wife for compensation in the divorce settlement, it seems Susan is running away from her responsibilities. Rumor has it that Director Martinez's wife is determined to see this through and is preparing for court. If Susan keeps running away like this, she might face a future where her assets are seized. It's the punishment for her actions. I hope she takes this opportunity to reflect deeply on her behavior. After that, I returned to Smith Group. To be honest, I could have easily found a job at another company, but the president had persuaded me to stay. "There's no one else but you, Linda. Please, won't you come back to the company?" He had pleaded desperately, and I couldn't bring myself to refuse. Now, I'm working hard as the director of the customer service call center department, taking over Director Martinez's role. Of course, I'm back as a full-time employee. And of course, my family is cheering me on. I'm sure there will be many more difficulties ahead. But each time, I want to face them head-on and do my best. I don't remember being raised by you. And what's with this method? Frankly, this is kidnapping, isn't it? Don't say such awful things. With that, Violet slapped my cheek hard. Inside, I thought to myself, good, keep it going. Eventually, the taxi arrived at a somewhat faded 3-story high building. Surprised? I'm a wealthy executive's wife, made it big and succeeded in life. You're still poor, at the bottom, so I thought I'd share some with you. I see. She's trying to use me after all. Once my parents found and came to rescue me, I firmly stated, "No, this person alone is my mom. She has been by my side for 3 times longer than you have, providing me with warm days." So what? You're saying you chose to live in poverty with this person who's ill? At that, Violet spoke, and my dad, David, let out a big laugh, finding it amusing. Hey, Violet. Let me introduce you to a family and a company worth $500 million.
What?
My name is Sharon. I'm 18 and will be a college student this spring. Having safely finished my entrance exams, I'm now enjoying the days free from studying for exams.
Hey, isn't it about time to be heading out?
David, in an apron, calls up the stairs to my room on the second floor.
I know!
I shout back. That's because today is the day for college registration. Since I've decided to go to a college in the next state, I need to attend a session about dorms or apartments provided by the school.
Maybe I should go with you?
I'm fine by myself. If you say so. David nods, looking a bit sad. Lily wanted to go, too.
She's got work, can't be helped.
Yes, our family consists of 3 people. The difference from other families is that Mom earns well outside, while Dad is the homemaker. David is now 48. Mom, Lily, is 40, 8 years his junior. And she and I are not related by blood. But to me, she's the only mom. I could never acknowledge as mom the woman who left me at 3 years old and a sick David to become some executive's mistress. Not in a million years. The real mom left us 15 years ago. Her name is Violet. It infuriates me even to call her mom, so I always refer to her by name in my mind. But of course, I'd never say such things in front of my dad. He's kind, and I know it would make him sad to hear me speak ill of my biological parent. I don't want to see him sad. I want to keep seeing him smile gently between Lily and I. There were 2 reasons Violet left us 15 years ago. One was my dad's illness. The other was an affair with the president of the company she was part-timing at. Back then, Dad couldn't bring himself to blame Violet for the affair. He simply didn't have the strength. Dad's illness is incurable by nature. And back then, his condition was particularly severe. Hearing this, Violet yelled at him.
Incurable? So it's a terminal illness?
Dad was disillusioned by Violet's insensitivity, even in a hospital room filled with beds. That's why he signed the divorce papers she presented without hesitation. I couldn't let such a woman remain my mom. I was staying at Dad's parents' house at the time, and my grandparents would hug me, tears in their eyes, pitying me. It wasn't until I was in high school that I realized half of those tears were of frustration. Now, they live freely in a nursing home far away, but at that time, the air was always tense with the aftermath of Violet's actions and Dad's illness. My circumstances changed when my current mom and my dad met. Dad's illness wasn't immediately life-threatening, but it required a long hospital stay at that time. It was a daily necessity to keep administering medicine through and for. Now, he leads a normal life, but back then, he was always accompanied by an enforced stand. That's when he met Lily, who was also hospitalized. At the time, Dad was 33, and Lily was 25. Dad was managing to do some work for his company remotely. The company wanted to keep Dad, a competent employee, on the roster. But the outlook was bleak. That's when the two met. Lily was hospitalized due to physical and mental exhaustion from overwork. Hospital life was a drastic change from her busy days, making her days gloomy. The two got to know each other and eventually concluded that together, they could make it work. They don't tell me the details of their relationship, perhaps because it's not suitable for a daughter to hear. However, even these two couldn't marry right away. Especially Lily. The people around them seemed to welcome the idea of an early marriage. But marrying someone 8 years older, with a divorce and a child in the past, was hard for others to understand. Lily has always been kind yet strict with me. She'd pamper me but also discipline me where necessary. After being discharged, Lily made time from her busy schedule to visit Dad. And gradually deepened her interaction with me, managing to marry with everyone's consent after 5 years. And for the past 10 years, we've lived quietly and happily. Yet, there it was.
Sharon? You're Sharon, right?
A stranger's voice stopped me as I was about to move on to the next orientation after getting my college paperwork. It was Violet.
Hey, Sharon. Do you remember me? I'm your mom.
Violet approached with a soothing tone as she said those words. I was surprised and started to flee, claiming not to know such a person. It was natural for me to act that way. How am I supposed to respond to a woman who claims to be my mom, but whom I've never seen once since parting at the age of 3? Who are you? I asked.
Don't speak as if we're strangers. Aren't I your mom?
Now that she mentions it, she's the person from the photos in the album. My grandmother used to complain, why on earth do we still have that woman's photos? It can't be helped. Photos of me up to the age of 3 inevitably include her. Dad probably kept them, bearing her presence, because he didn't want to throw away my photos. By the way, I heard about this from Lily. Unfortunately, I don't know you.
What? Are you angry? For not visiting?
Violet approached slowly, with a wry smile. I get scolded by my family if I follow strangers.
Don't say such sad things.
Saying so, Violet tried to take my hand, but I quickly shook her off and returned home. Opening the apartment door, I heard humming. Dad was in the kitchen, preparing a meal. Every day, Dad thinks of meals that Lily and I like and cooks for us. I wanted to finish this conversation before Lily returned.
Dad! Dad!
I ran into the kitchen, flustered.
Oh, Sharon. What's wrong? You look pale. And you're back earlier than I thought. Yeah. Sorry, the dorm stuff can wait.
I sat down at the dining kitchen chair, took some water from Dad, and then said,
That woman was at my college. The one who left us 15 years ago. What?
Dad exclaimed, pulling up a chair next to me.
I'm surprised you were able to recognize her face, Sharon. I had seen her in photos, and above all, she desperately tried to approach me.
That's troubling. Dad crossed his arms and murmured,
What do you think we should do? She'll probably show up at college again, won't she?
Maybe. There's no need to meet her. She and we have no relation anymore. But still. Dad tilted his head and furrowed his brows.
Why now? Why is she trying to get close to you after all this time? What? What do you mean?
David didn't answer that. Sometime later, Lily returned.
Welcome back.
I'm home. Thanks for making all my favorites. I think Lily's willingness to always express her gratitude cheerfully and brightly is one of her best traits. Her job is truly demanding. She leaves early in the morning and often returns late at night. She might even be busier than the typical dad in any ordinary family. I don't know if it's because of that or if she's considering me, but Lily didn't try to have children of her own. I once asked her lightly, and she replied, In reality, I'm just too busy to even think about it. Besides, for me, you Sharon are my only daughter. Still, I think there must have been a desire for a child with someone she loves. But including such thoughts, I respect and am grateful for Lily. And I hope she remains happy forever. She's still 40. Having one child is still possible. Wouldn't it be better for them to have a child, considering after I go to college or become independent? After all, our family has an excellent homemaker. From that evening, my mobile phone started receiving many calls from an unknown caller.
Dad, this.
Showing him the call history, Dad hurriedly pulled out an old notebook. It must be a number not registered on my current mobile phone. As he flips through the notebook, he eventually makes a disgusted face and lets out a big sigh.
It's her after all. How did she find out your number? I don't know. She hasn't changed her number, has she? It seems so. Well, she was never one to bother with such things.
Then Lily, fresh out of the bath and drying her hair, asks,
What's going on? You both look so serious.
What to do? Dad signals with his eyes. I nod.
Mom, actually, today in front of the college, Violet ambushed me. She came to see me. What? Are you okay? Did she do anything to you?
Dropping her towel, Lily immediately shows concern for me.
I'm fine. She didn't do anything. But because of that, I have to reschedule the dorm and apartment tour. Oh, if only I could have gone with you.
Saying that, Lily lets out a big sigh.
Next time, you're coming with me. That's right. We'll also sort out the dorm stuff at the same time. How about Monday since it follows the weekend?
That sounds good. Lily says and then falls silent, lost in thought.
You'll catch a cold.
Dad says as he dries her hair with the abandoned towel, even going as far as to blow drying it. Watching them, I think to myself what a great couple they are. I want to keep this family just the way it is. That's why the thought of what Violet, who appeared out of nowhere, is planning scares me. After spending the whole weekend at home, I decided to go back to the college with Dad for the paperwork on Monday. We were walking slowly to the station. The college is a few minutes away from the nearest station. We walked leisurely side by side, talking about what the dorm might be like or how much an apartment would cost. Suddenly, I felt myself losing balance.
Sharon?
Dad shouts. I was grabbed by the arm and dragged into a taxi.
Driver, go now.
A familiar voice reached my ears. It was Violet. I saw Dad's panicked figure through the window, but the taxi started moving before the door could be opened.
What are you doing?
Once I regained my posture, I yelled as loudly as I could.
Because you kept ignoring my calls. Are you saying I should answer calls from a number I don't recognize? That's right. So I came to you directly.
Violet approached me, and I recoiled slightly.
Can't you just come with me without saying anything?
No.
You talk as if we're strangers. I'm your mom, aren't I?
I scoffed at her words.
What? That attitude. Do you really think you're my mom?
I chose my words carefully, making sure even the driver in the front seat could hear.
Since I gave birth to you, you are my daughter. I don't remember being raised by you. And what's with this method? Frankly, this is kidnapping, isn't it? Don't say such awful things.
After saying that, Violet slapped my cheek hard. Inside, I thought to myself, good, keep it going. Eventually, the taxi arrived at a somewhat faded 3-story high building.
This is our company,
Violet said.
Surprised? I'm a wealthy executive's wife, made it big and succeeded in life. You're still poor at the bottom, so I thought I'd share some with you.
I see. So, she's trying to use me, I thought. After bringing me into the building, Violet pushed me into a nearby room and locked the door. I banged on the door, asking, "What are you doing?" to Violet outside.
Just wait here for a bit, please.
What does she mean? I took out my mobile phone from my pocket and immediately sent a message to David, telling him where I am. I sent a screenshot of my current location on the map and a photo of what could be seen from the room's window. Soon, I received a reply.
Stay put. I'll figure something out.
Of course, that was my intention. Eventually, Violet unlocked the door and took me out. Holding onto my arm, she led me up the stairs to a room about halfway down the second floor. Voices of several people could be heard from inside. Violet forcefully opened the door. As expected, several people were inside, seemingly in the middle of a meeting by the placement of the desk and whiteboard.
What is this? We're in the middle of a meeting here.
The youngest-looking person with glasses stood up and approached us. However, Violet pulled me inside.
It's nothing, Neil. I was his wife after all, so I have the right to participate in meetings deciding the company's future. We didn't invite you. Oh, speaking to your stepmother like that?
I see. So, this Neil with glasses is the president's son. But the whiteboard mentioned something about future management strategies. And the absence of the president himself means
you're just Dad's second wife. And you were involved with Dad even when Mom was here. And you call yourself a stepmother? That's right. Everything about after the president's death was supposed to have been discussed after the funeral. What are you doing coming here now? Oh, acting all high and mighty just because you used to be my superior.
Then, for some reason, Violet pushed me forward. Hey, Neil.
This girl, who is like a stepsister to you, is struggling with college fees. Couldn't you provide some support?
What? I was shocked. Was I brought here for that reason?
College fees?
Neil's tone slightly changed.
Yes. This child is my biological daughter. She's 18, just started college. Living a poor life with David who's ill. Hey, if you felt like supporting her a bit, couldn't you give me a bit more of his fortune?
I looked at Neil's face. The atmosphere was one of trouble. I see. It seems I must speak up.
What are you talking about? I haven't been informed about any of this. Hey, don't talk crazy. Because it's true, isn't it? You kidnapped me and dragged me here all of a sudden. All of a sudden?
Neil picked up on my words.
Yes, all of a sudden. I was supposed to be going with Dad to take care of dormitory paperwork, not college paperwork. So, you mean to say the college paperwork is already done? Including the tuition? Yes, it's all been paid for.
Neil glared at Violet. Violet looked puzzled, as if wondering what was going on. Neil continued to question me.
So, how did you end up here? I came by taxi. I have no business here myself. I was forcibly brought here by this person. Be quiet!
Violet then slapped my other cheek. What a strength. It stung. Doesn't this person know the meaning of restraint? Anyway, I tried to buy time. I had contacted Dad, and probably Lily would take some action. Until then, I needed to extract as much information as possible from these people.
I see. So you really don't know anything, huh?
Neil started.
I'm the son of the previous president. Officially, I'm supposed to be the president from this term. And you're saying you're my stepsister?
No, I don't feel that way at all. I stated clearly.
I was abandoned by this person at the age of 3, along with my sick dad.
Then, I felt the atmosphere in the room turn cold. Of course, their gazes were all directed at Violet. How shallow is Violet? Did she think I remained the 3-year-old she left behind? Did she assume I, now a college student, would be afraid of Violet and comply with her demands? Perhaps in her mind, the past 15 years never happened.
I remember very well. You called us once, didn't you? Do you remember what you said then?
What did I say?
The same thing you said to me earlier. You bragged about being a wealthy executive's wife, successful in life, while laughing and calling us poor, living at the bottom.
I could feel the people in the room pulling away.
You said that? When was this? It must have been when you got remarried, right? I had no idea about any of it. Maybe about 10 years ago? Being a college student now means you were still in elementary school back then. Were you really spoken to so horribly at such a young age?
Yes. I nodded.
Well, by that time, her words didn't harm me anymore.
That's when it happened. People started running into the company building.
Sharon, are you okay? Sharon, are you all right? Where are you?
I could hear the voices of David and Lily shouting loudly. More footsteps followed. I peeked into the hallway and shouted, "This way, Dad and Mom." Relying on my voice, they ran through the stairs and hallways, and with a noise, they opened the door. "You're safe, Sharon, thank goodness." Saying that, Lily hugged me tightly.
I was so worried. I'm okay. Got slapped twice on the cheek, though.
Twice, huh? Someone behind my parents stared at my face and pointed a camera at me.
Let me take a photo. Go ahead.
I pushed my face forward, boldly. The cheek Violet slapped really hurt. Might as well get it documented as evidence.
Who are you people?
Violet shouted, pointing at my parents.
Have you forgotten the face of your husband from 15 years ago? What? What's with that healthy look? Is it bad to look healthy?
Ah, I see. Was that the reason she couldn't immediately understand that I was with Dad? It seems this person truly believed that Dad had remained bedridden due to his illness all this time.
You said you had an incurable disease. I'm not cured. It's just that life is possible even without a cure. Do you know what remission is? Remission?
She seemed not to know.
Remission means the symptoms have temporarily lightened or disappeared. There's a possibility of recovery, but also a high chance of relapse.
Yes, he's not cured. We always have to be careful about his condition, take various medicines without forgetting, and continue visiting the hospital regularly.
So, saying he has an incurable disease isn't a lie, is it?
Lily bit at that.
Who the hell are you? I was about to ask you the same. What are you doing to my daughter? Her cheeks. She's my daughter. I can do whatever I want.
I couldn't stay silent at that.
No, this person alone is my mom. She has been by my side for 3 times longer than you ever did, giving me a warm home.
So what? You're saying you chose to live in poverty with this person who's ill? Violet said, and David laughed loudly, finding it amusing.
Hey, Violet. Let me introduce you to a family and a company worth $500 million. What?
Yes. So, let me reintroduce myself, Violet. I'm Lily, this man's wife. I heard about how you abandoned a man with an illness and a 3-year-old Sharon to become another man's mistress, but I see you're really as unreasonable as they say. That's an interesting story indeed. I'd love to hear more about it. Neil showed interest in the conversation.
By the way, mentioning a $500 million annual revenue, are you perhaps the president of T Corporation?
Yes. I believe we've had dealings with your company. Lily spread her radiant smile to everyone but Violet. Indeed, the person who supports our busy lives daily had been entrusted with the significant role of a company president since her 20s. Lily met Dad when the pressure of her suddenly acquired responsibilities became too much, causing both her body and mind to scream for help, leading to her hospitalization. Lily was born as the only daughter in the founding family. However, she lost her parents to an accident at an early age. Then, still at the young age of 25, she took over the presidency, struggling with the immense expectations around her and her inability to meet them. During her hospitalization for severe stress-induced gastritis, she met Dad, who was aiming for remission, and me when I visited him. Dad told Lily back then,
"It's important to delegate what feels insurmountable to someone you can trust."
That seemed to have lightened Lily's burden significantly. Tired of the matchmaking attempts by meddling relatives, she found comfort and ease in being with Dad, deciding to marry him because she could rely on him and be herself around him.
"You seemed quite pleased with yourself after becoming the president's wife following the previous one's death." "My current wife is a president herself." "That's right. T Corporation handles all the specialized cleaning required by certain departments within our company. And she's the president of that company. If you had even a slight interest in the economy, she wouldn't be a stranger to you."
Violet was surprised by Neil's words.
"Yes, we perform a wide range of cleaning services, from ordinary cleaning to those requiring special expertise. I believe we have been dealing with your company since your father's time. It seems we need to reconsider that contract now."
Lily looked around sternly.
"Right? A company that harbors someone who would kidnap our daughter should have its contract terminated. We cannot trust such a company. That is..."
The executives present shifted uncomfortably.
"Please reconsider. Our business cannot function without your company's cooperation." "What? Really?"
Violet looked confused.
"Violet, didn't you know that? And yet you tried to obstruct me from becoming president and even tried to withdraw money. You're incredibly ignorant. In fact, your presence has been nothing but harmful to this company, hasn't it, everyone?"
Exactly, that's right. The company's executives agreed.
"What? But supposedly, the inheritance you received from Dad's will was given to you long ago. What did you do with that money? The fact that you're demanding more now suggests you've squandered it all, or were you already in debt?"
Neil pressed further.
"Maybe she spent it on something?"
Lily interjected.
"Right, I had our daughter's situation investigated hastily in 2 days because a suspicious person approached her."
2 days? Ah, yes, the weekend.
"And the photos taken earlier."
The company's lawyer nodded.
"Upon the president's request, we conducted a little investigation on her, and it appears she's been a regular at nightclubs for quite some time, making substantial donations there. Perhaps you've been receiving payment demands because you've fallen behind?" "So that's what you were doing? Wow."
I gave Violet an exasperated look as if to say, "Can you believe this?"
"Thank you for the investigation."
"No problem. It's problematic for us to have such a person associated with a business partner."
"Indeed, we should deal with harmful elements to the company as soon as possible."
As Neil said this, our lawyer nodded emphatically. Then, several men entered from behind.
"You are under arrest for kidnapping and unlawful confinement."
The men, displaying police badges, entered and handcuffed Violet.
"What do you mean? I just took my daughter. After divorcing me and dumping the custody on me, you're practically a stranger now. And I don't recall ever receiving child support from you."
I added, dismayed at her claiming any parental rights.
"Abducting me in front of Dad in a taxi, how can you not realize how wrong your actions are?" "How dare you, my own daughter!"
It's fine to be brazen.
I've wanted to say this.
I stared firmly at Violet.
"I never wanted to think about you. Just disappear from my sight. Don't ever show your face again.
Even Violet was taken aback by those words. Then, let's go, said the police as they pushed her body and took her outside. Violet was officially arrested for being the perpetrator of the kidnapping and is currently under investigation. It was a sloppy crime, to say the least. It's strange she didn't notice Dad walking nearby, but more so that she suddenly dragged me into a taxi. Inside the car, I deliberately spoke loudly and clearly, expressing that being taken was against my will and that I currently felt nothing towards Mom. I wanted the driver to hear clearly that I was obviously unwilling. Sure enough, the suspicious driver seems to have broadcast our conversation over the radio. And the taxi company, finding the audio suspicious, recorded it. It was foolish of Violet not to confiscate my mobile phone. With today's phones, it's easy to pinpoint your current location and send a map image as evidence. I learned such crisis management from Lily. She too had been taught at home how to determine her whereabouts in case of an emergency. It appears the money Violet squandered was indeed substantial, and she is being asked to return it to the company. A criminal trial for the kidnapping will take place, and it's certain she will end up behind bars. We have no intention of showing mercy, no matter what their lawyers say. Violet should thoroughly realize her shallowness.
Smile, smile.
On the day of my university's entrance ceremony, Dad and I were taking photos together. Next, it's my turn. Saying that, Lily handed the camera to Dad and swapped places.
The two of you together look truly wonderful.
Dad said something that seemed a bit cheesy. Maybe it was the spring weather. But we won't see each other for a while now, Lily said, tearing up a bit. Dad wrapped an arm around her shoulder. Facing them, I spoke up.
Hey, I have a request.
Oh, what is it?
I want to have a brother or sister this time.
Their faces turned red.
Now? Yeah. Because, Mom, you're 40, right? That's still a viable age. Now that I'm an adult, maybe you two could spend some time together and show me a brother or sister?
Don't say that. Lily hugged me. You are my one and only daughter.
That's true, but Mom, you have so much love to give, you must be lonely without me. Oh, come on! I should have made you go to a closer school. That's impossible.
I chuckled. Actually, wanting to see a sibling or worrying about loneliness was just a pretext. Lily is currently at the top of her company. But I don't think I should be the one to take over. Dad agrees with this. After all, I am David's child, not Lily's biological child. No matter how much Lily treats me as her own, others may not recognize it. Especially since this company is a well-established mid-tier business with a long history. There's a tradition of family management in a good sense. She must be aware of this. After a moment of silence, Lily finally nodded deeply. Right. Maybe I should give it a little try. She smiled hesitantly and a bit shyly, uncharacteristic of her. No matter how things turn out, we remain a family. We've managed well so far. And surely, we'll continue to get along well in the future. My name is Olivia. I'm 35 and have been married to my husband Lucas for 7 years. We have a 5-year-old son, Thomas. Normally, it's just the three of us living a peaceful life, but I have one major grievance. It's the long vacations and Christmas when we go to Lucas's parents' house. Only his parents live there, but during the holidays, his sister and her family join us too. During these gatherings, which sometimes exceed 10 people, I'm expected to handle all the meal preparations. Because I'm married to the eldest son, everyone seems to think it's my duty. His sisters don't help me at all. On top of that, they leave their kids with me and go out to have fun. Even Lucas doesn't offer me any help, so as the holidays approach, I start to dread them. Just the thought of preparing meals at my in-laws is painful, not to mention the harassment I endure from Lucas's mother, Ava. From the beginning of our marriage, Ava has criticized everything I do. The first time we went to visit after getting married, she told me out of the blue, "Olivia, please prepare all the meals while you're here." I was shocked. It was my first time in their kitchen, and everything was thrown at me. In a panic, I checked the fridge, finding almost nothing. I had to start by shopping for groceries. "Do you want anything specific to eat?" I asked with a smile without showing my irritation.
"Just make something delicious. Don't check with us every time, just get on with the cooking."
Jackson, Lucas's father, seemed nice and calm, but I couldn't figure out what he really thought. Ava was always openly hostile towards me. Even when I casually asked Lucas about his parents' favorite dishes, "Anything's fine, don't worry too much about it," he always responds so casually. Lucas is originally unreliable, but since then, my distrust in him has only grown. In the end, I decided to make a safe choice and cook curry. As the smell of curry began to waft from the kitchen, Ava started her snide remarks.
"Curry gives me heartburn. I'll have to take some antacid tonight."
Without time to make anything else, I served the curry for dinner. Ava complained that the curry was too spicy, or that she preferred pork over beef.
"Anyone can make a decent curry,"
she remarked, leaving the comment hanging in the air, yet she went for seconds. Meanwhile, Jackson ate without saying a word, but after he finished, he let out a deep sigh and left the room. While Ava's reactions are irritating, Jackson's sigh feels more condemning than her snide remarks. Dealing with just my in-laws' meals is stressful enough, but it gets even worse when Lucas's sisters and their families join. Harper's family consists of Lucas's sister Harper, her husband Ethan, and their daughter. Harper, in her appearance and manner of speaking, is frighteningly similar to Ava. Together, they hurl insults at me, making it feel like there are two Avas. When Harper comes to visit, she expects me to handle everything from cooking to making beds. Of course, she doesn't thank me, she takes it for granted. Ethan, usually quiet around his in-laws and Harper, becomes tyrannical when they're not around.
"Go buy cigarettes,"
he'd demand, treating me more like a housemaid than family. Their daughter Emma, much like Harper, seems spiteful.
"Olivia, we're out of juice."
Then Ethan would join in, ordering,
"Olivia, I'm out of beer. Bring some."
Laughing foolishly, the two of them enjoy themselves. They are usually quiet in front of Harper, probably because they're used to being scolded by her. They seem to let loose when at the in-laws. For me, who ends up doing all the work, it's unbearable. Natalie's family includes Lucas's sister Natalie, her husband Mason, and their son. Compared to the insidious Ava and Harper, Natalie is brighter and easier to talk to. She always comes to chat while I'm preparing meals. While it's nice to be approached so casually, Natalie doesn't help at all. At first, I used to listen to her seriously, but if she's not going to help, she's just in the way. Eventually, when I responded non-committally to her chatter,
"Are you even listening to me?"
she'd snap. Busy with work, I had to listen to Natalie's endless, meaningless stories about her husband's complaints or her in-laws' snide remarks. I wanted to vent to Natalie too, but I couldn't dare speak ill of the in-laws. As soon as Natalie realizes I'm not fully engaged, she'd tattle to Ava and Harper. Then I'd get scolded by both Ava and Harper.
"Just because she's your sister-in-law doesn't mean you can ignore her. You should at least listen to her. Such a mean spirit, bullying your weaker sister."
They'd freely insult me. I wanted to retort, "Who's the mean one here?" But I didn't have the courage. All I could do was endure the long vacations and Christmases. Even when I was pregnant, the treatment didn't change.
"I worked as usual the day after I gave birth,"
Ava would brag, expecting the same from me. I heard from Lucas that Ava had been badly harassed by her mother-in-law too. It seems she's intent on making me experience the same misery. I wish she would stop returning the ill treatment she received onto her daughter-in-law. Thomas was born in December, so that year, we didn't go to the in-laws for Christmas. "Why don't you go home alone?" I suggested to Lucas. He replied grumpily, "It's boring to go back by myself, so let's skip it this year." He informed me that year, the siblings didn't stay at the in-laws for Christmas as usual. They left immediately. Without me there, nobody could handle the meal preparations, so no one stayed overnight. But from the next vacation onwards, the hellish treatment at the in-laws returned. Now, I had to take care of Thomas while preparing meals and accommodations. When Thomas dirtied his clothes and I had to do laundry at the in-laws, since we're letting you use the washing machine, do our laundry as well. They started making me wash their laundry too. Seeing this, the sisters-in-law began piling their laundry on me as well. I ended up folding Ava's and her sister's laundry. Completely turned into a housemaid, they even dumped childcare on me. Looking after 1 or 2 kids is the same. Please take care of my son, they'd say before leaving the newborn with me and going out to have fun with Ava and the family. Only Jackson stayed home, pretending not to notice anything and watching TV. I was shocked when even Lucas left with Ava and the others. From that moment, my affection for Lucas began to cool off. As I was taking care of the 2 babies, one of them would inevitably start crying. Then Jackson would explode in anger.
The noise is so loud, I can't hear the TV. Finally got rid of the annoying bunch, and I can't even watch TV in peace.
Jackson, usually quiet in front of Ava and her daughters, didn't hesitate to complain to me. I hated his silent pressure on regular days, but him yelling like this was just pathetic. The men in this house only act tough when the women aren't around, then badmouth them behind their backs, especially Mason, who is amusing to watch because of his drastic two-faced nature. In front of Ava and the sisters-in-law, he's all smiles, serving food and drinks diligently. But when the women are absent, he's swapping nasty comments about their wives with Ethan. Not caring about how it affects me, his wife, they freely talk trash.
Why do we have to come here every vacation and Christmas? I feel the same. It's nothing but torture for us husbands.
Moreover,
just between us, my marriage isn't going too well, so next time I might not be here,
they'd say, laughing uproariously. Whether they're joking or serious. They don't care that I'm listening, the conversation escalates. Honestly, my marriage isn't great either. My wife is too domineering, always looking down on me. They glanced around, and seeing it was just me, they began whispering.
My wife is just like her mother. Thinking about her getting even tougher with age is dreadful. Daughters do resemble their mothers, don't they? Recently, even her face is starting to look like her mother's, and it's creepy.
Both of them were rolling on the floor, laughing at their own words. I began to wonder if Lucas also talked badly about me when I wasn't around. These two, laughing at such talk, would transform into entirely different people the moment Ava or the sisters-in-law appeared. They knew that if I told Ava or the sisters-in-law about their behavior, I would be the one accused of lying. That's why they felt free to speak ill of Ava and the sisters-in-law in front of me. Year by year, the workload dumped on me during the holidays at the in-laws grew heavier. Apart from meals, overnight arrangements, childcare, and laundry, now I was even tasked with picking up and dropping off Natalie's family. During a meal right before everyone was about to leave.
I'd like a beer, but I have to drive home, so maybe I should refrain,
Mason mentioned. Hearing this, Ava chimed in. From next time, let's have Olivia pick you up. That way, you can drink beer without any worries. She suggested to Mason. Mason, perhaps jokingly, agreed, but Ava took it seriously. No, you don't need to go that far, he said. But cutting off his words, Ava commanded. From now on, you will do the pickups. No one dared to object. In the car back home, even I, usually restrained, lashed out at Lucas.
I'm already cooking, arranging accommodations, taking care of the kids, and even doing everyone's laundry. Now I have to do pickups too.
Lucas, taken aback by my anger, was at a loss for words.
Is there no limit to harassing your wife? How much more do they want to exploit me?
My anger was justified. The in-laws' house was in a snowy region, making Christmas visits challenging. Natalie's house was a 2-hour drive one way, but in heavy snow, it could take nearly double that time. I knew Ava would expect me to finish cooking and then go pick up Natalie's family. Exhausted and asked to drive in such conditions was absurd. I'm not accustomed to long drives, and surely Natalie's family would be terrified too. I was furious that Lucas, knowing this, didn't stand up to Ava.
I'm cutting ties with your family. I won't see Jackson, Ava, or your sisters ever again.
I didn't want to see Ava or the sisters who did as they pleased. Hoping to calm my fury, he responded with a forced smile. Totally fine. I'll let Mom and everyone know, so don't worry. When Lucas talks smoothly like this, he's usually just trying to appease the situation. But with his agreement, I finally felt freed from the in-laws' clutches. I marvel at my own patience over the past 7 years of marriage. That Christmas, I went on a trip with Thomas and my parents. It was the first time since Thomas was born that I spent Christmas with my parents. It's rare for us to be together for Christmas. Is it okay for Lucas to go back to his parents alone? Having shared my in-laws' harsh treatment with them, my parents were surprised by the trip. It's okay. I have Lucas's permission, so he won't complain. I assured them, though I wasn't sure if Lucas had really talked to his parents. He had reluctantly agreed to cut ties with his family after my outburst, but I doubted his parents and sisters would accept it easily. They had been taking it easy so far, likely avoiding preparing meals themselves. However, they probably thought they could easily buy meals from the supermarket, so I assumed they weren't too worried. My parents, seeing their grandson Thomas after a long time, were overjoyed, and Thomas seemed to have fun too. When we visited the in-laws, I never had time to pay attention to Thomas, and I realized he must have felt lonely. Watching the three of them having fun, I completely forgot about the in-laws. Then, in the lobby of the luxurious hotel where we were relaxing, a familiar man walked in with a young woman on his arm. He resembled Mason, but he was supposed to be at the in-laws. The more I looked, the more he seemed familiar, and it appeared he noticed my stare. The man made a surprised face and quickly turned away. Likely because he was up to something shady. I pretended not to see and averted my gaze from the man. Just then, I received a call from Lucas.
Hello, what's up? Please, can you come to the family home right now? It's chaos here, nothing is prepared. Haven't we agreed that I wouldn't go anymore from this year?
I wasn't surprised. I had expected something like this.
I did mention it, but it seems the message didn't get across.
He replied. I figured he hadn't really talked to his parents. I had already informed them that I wouldn't be able to pick up Natalie's family. Natalie had complained, but it seemed she had been pacified. Lucas was desperately trying to get me to come back. But I was more focused on the commotion and what sounded like Natalie's voice in the background.
Mason has run off with some woman. He said he was going to work, but when I called the office, they said he was off today.
Hearing Natalie's words confirmed that the man I saw was indeed her husband.
Mason is at the hotel we're staying at right now,
I responded. Lucas was taken aback by the sudden shift in the conversation.
What? My brother-in-law is there?
I decided to tell the truth, thinking it would serve Natalie right for how she had treated me. Natalie must have heard Lucas's voice, as she snatched his mobile phone and started shouting at me.
Mason is there! Where are you right now?
Natalie screamed, almost rupturing my eardrums. Young and beautiful woman, high-class hotel. I replied. Next, Ava grabbed the phone and started yelling at me.
How dare you go to a hotel on your own? You think that's acceptable?
Even though they're shouting at me loudly, I can hear them.
I've discussed this with Lucas. I have his permission to not associate with you anymore.
I replied, deliberately provoking her. Ava started screaming something incomprehensible. Then Harper snatched the phone.
We can't even have a meal without you. Please, somehow come back.
Harper said, unusually polite, but I knew she only spoke like that when in trouble. In the background, Emma, Harper's ill-natured daughter, yelled,
Olivia! Hurry up and prepare the meal!
I couldn't help but laugh, realizing she was just echoing Harper's true feelings. The in-laws' house seemed to be in such a frenzy that I just hung up the phone. Since I had set my phone to reject calls, I didn't know what happened afterward until Lucas returned home. Seeing Lucas's reaction upon his return, I was prepared for the possibility of divorce. Worst case scenario, I was ready to make a life for Thomas and myself as an office worker. When Lucas returned from his parents' house, he apologized profoundly.
I now understand how hard it's been for you all this time. I'm truly sorry.
Lucas had been burdened with preparing the Christmas meal, doing everyone's laundry, and taking care of the kids, especially Natalie's child, throughout the holiday. Natalie, after hearing from me about the affair, had tracked Mason down to our hotel, apparently catching him in the act. Indeed, when we were leaving, the hotel staff seemed flustered, and there was talk of a quarreling couple. Perhaps that was her. Everyone had complained about Lucas's cooking, having never done it before, and, fed up with their nasty remarks.
I'm cutting ties with this house too. I'm never coming back,
he snapped. It seems Lucas has declared cutting ties as well. Hearing Lucas's declaration of disconnection, I felt relieved and confessed.
If you hadn't decided to cut ties with your family, I was planning to divorce you.
Smiling as I said this, Lucas began to cry and apologized again. I'm really sorry. Believing in his tears, I decided to keep striving together as a couple. From that year on, we decided to go on trips with my parents for Christmas. Both my parents and our family are delighted, and we intend to keep this tradition. Meanwhile, the in-laws' house doesn't seem to gather anyone anymore. Natalie and her husband divorced soon after. Natalie, having custody of the child, now had to work to support her life, leaving her with no long vacations or Christmases. Harper also realized that if the other siblings didn't return, she would have to prepare the meals herself, and didn't want to go through that hassle just to visit her parents' house. Left alone, the in-laws led a lonely life, unable to see their children or grandchildren. Ava, unable to harass anyone else, seemed to have turned her frustrations on Jackson, and I heard from Lucas that Jackson had left home. Lucas, deeply affected by the criticism of his cooking at the in-laws, has been cooking more often lately. Watching Lucas improve his cooking skills makes all that commotion feel like a distant memory. As soon as Thomas saw me, he pleaded,
Please, take care of me.
Why should I do that? I blurted out reflexively. Who does he think he is asking this? When I was hospitalized with a broken bone. It's a no from me. Ask someone else. And who was it who said that? It's your own responsibility. Be grateful you even got help. This is the end of me reaching out to Thomas. I am Elizabeth. 32 years old. Married 5 years ago, with my husband Thomas, our son Anthony, and our dog Max. We're a family of 3 and 1 pet. Thomas works at a major IT company and is very busy every day. Leaving home early in the morning and often not returning until the date changes isn't uncommon. He frequently works on weekends and takes business trips once a month. Thanks to that, Thomas rarely spends time with the family and has almost no memories of playing with Anthony. However, he has risen rapidly in his career, attaining a managerial position in his 30s. We were able to build my dream house because Thomas worked so hard. My parents are farmers in a rural area. That's why I always longed for a suburban house with a yard. Thanks to Thomas, Anthony and I live comfortably. I've come to terms with our limited family time. To outsiders, we might seem like a blessed family. However, due to my husband's frequent absence, I handle all the childcare and housework alone. It's basically single parenting. I wanted to work and send Anthony to daycare, but Thomas insisted on a preschool that also teaches. So Anthony goes to preschool and I ended up as a housewife. But I have a reassuring friend. My childhood friend Madison. We're the same age and from the same countryside. By coincidence, our kids attend the same preschool. Madison has been a single mother since her divorce last year. After dropping Anthony at preschool, having coffee at my place is my only break. We share our gripes about Thomas and the hardships of parenting. It's when I'm talking to Madison that I realize something. Unknowingly, I've been harboring dissatisfaction towards Thomas. People always say it's wrong to feel dissatisfied in my situation, and I thought so too. But maybe, I was just convincing myself not to be discontent. One day, while walking Max, he suddenly ran off. I chased after Max desperately. A car had stopped in front of me, and while Max managed to avoid it, I wasn't able to stop and ended up hitting the car. It was entirely my fault. Max looked at me worriedly from the sidewalk. I was relieved he was safe, but I couldn't stand up. I was taken to the hospital by ambulance, diagnosed with a bruised shoulder and fractures in my ankle and fibula, and admitted immediately. It seems I'll be hospitalized for about 3 months. I wondered what would happen with Anthony's care. And the house. The worries seemed endless. I called Thomas's mobile phone. I thought he would cooperate at a time like this, but he was continuously unavailable. As I grew anxious, Madison called me. It was to discuss costumes for the preschool play, but I cut the conversation short and asked her to take care of Anthony. Madison was initially surprised and concerned for me, but hearing that I sounded stronger than expected, she gladly agreed to look after Anthony. I was so grateful I almost cried. Next, I phoned Mom to briefly inform her of the accident and my weeks-long hospital stay. She said she'd come as soon as she finished her tasks. Until Mom arrives, Madison would be the only one to rely on. After hanging up with Mom, Thomas finally called. "Sorry, I was too busy to answer the phone." I reported the accident to Thomas and asked him to bring some clothes and essentials. But his response was unbelievable. "No way. Why should I do that? I have to get up early tomorrow, ask someone else." I had expected Thomas to be incredibly worried, but I was the one shocked. Not just because he refused to bring my things, but because he showed no concern at all. I had hoped for Thomas to worry about me and our family. Was I too naive to expect kind words from Thomas? The next day, Madison came to the hospital. She brought my change of clothes and other necessities from home. Madison has a key to my house. And I have one to hers. We always agreed to help each other out in emergencies. I brought extra towels. Let me know if you need anything else. Madison's thoughtfulness made me feel so grateful. After Thomas's behavior yesterday, her kindness was a relief. I couldn't help but tear up. Madison said with a laugh,
"You're overreacting."
Lending me a handkerchief. Madison is the complete opposite of me, calm, good at reading the atmosphere, and empathetic. I've never seen her in a fight. She's nothing like me, who wants to get a qualification and work outside. "Are you okay from the injury? Take better care of yourself." Madison's ever-gentle tone comforted me. "Don't worry about Anthony. He stayed at my place last night and slept with my kids." Without me saying anything, Madison understands. "Why is Thomas so indifferent to us? I get he's busy, but he doesn't even visit you in the hospital and hasn't seen Anthony, right?" While Madison visited, I vented my frustrations about Thomas. Seeing me sighing and lamenting, Madison smiled kindly. "Men are like that sometimes. He's probably under stress we don't know about at work." "Maybe, but not showing his face or concern, that's going too far. Thomas works late, he's not just out having fun, right?" "That's true. We have a comfortable life in our own home because of Thomas. He does earn enough for us." I felt somewhat convinced by Madison's words. "Let me know if you need anything. I can make time to come see you." Talking to Madison lightened my mood a bit. I'll have a proper talk with Thomas once I'm discharged from the hospital. Right now, I just wanted to see Anthony. Mom came from the countryside to help, and after 3 weeks, I was finally home. Mom dropped me off and left immediately due to responsibilities back home. My house felt so nostalgic after 3 weeks. Max greeted me. He barked at my crutches as if they were the enemy. I sat on the sofa and looked around. Nothing had changed. Home really is comforting. Max kept barking at me, even as I relaxed on the sofa. "There are no crutches now." "What's wrong?" Max dove into my bag and pulled out a handkerchief. The one I meant to return to Madison. I had put it in my bag to wash it at home. Max grabbed the hem of my pants and started pulling. He seemed to want to take me somewhere. I managed to get up and followed Max with my crutches. He walked excitedly. Max stopped in front of our bedroom, stood up, and opened the door with his claws. "Why the bedroom? Max, what's going on?" Without hesitation, Max dived under the bed and pulled something out with his mouth. It looked like a beautifully patterned cloth. Max dropped it in front of me. It looked familiar. I spread it out and realized it was a scarf. I remembered seeing it weeks ago. Yes, Madison wore it when she visited me in the hospital. But why is Madison's scarf here? I shuddered at an unpleasant thought. No, that can't be right. Madison is my childhood friend, my best friend, and she's kind. I shook my head to dismiss these scary thoughts. Then, Max climbed onto the bed and started pulling at the sheets. I felt as if the blood had drained from my body. If Max was right, it would mean Madison had slept in our bed. Madison's gentle smile flashed in my mind. It must be an overthinking. I talked to Max that no such thing have happened. Madison couldn't have slept here, right? Max gently licked my face. In the afternoon, Anthony came home. Seeing me, he hugged me tightly. Indeed, Anthony is my sunshine. I felt brighter and warmer. I tentatively asked him, "Where did you sleep while I was in the hospital?" "In my room, with Madison and her kids at our place." "It was fun." "What does that mean?" I thought Anthony stayed at Madison's house. Didn't Madison say so? My suspicions only grew. Where did Madison sleep then? I bravely asked Anthony where Madison slept. "I don't know. But she and Dad were talking in the living room late, probably drinking too." "I don't know. But she and Dad were talking in the living room late, probably drinking too." I left Anthony and went back to the bedroom. Standing there alone. The thought was overwhelming. Thomas and Madison in this bed while my family and I were ignored. I couldn't believe it. Or rather, I didn't want to believe it. The bed was neatly made, no sign of any disturbance in the sheets or duvet. But could the smell not have been completely removed? And then there was the forgotten item. That Max had noticed it. Since discovering this suspicion, I couldn't sleep in that bed. I started sleeping with Anthony. He was happy, not suspecting anything. Thomas had become a repulsive presence. With so many thoughts swirling in my head, there were many days I couldn't sleep. Where did we go wrong as a couple? When my leg cast was removed, Thomas left the house in a strangely good mood. I had a bad feeling. While waiting for the preschool bus, Madison arrived. She was unusually stylish. Her makeup a bit more flamboyant. "Good morning. You look so stylish today. Got a date?" I asked casually, trying not to show my suspicions. Madison smiled unabashedly.
"I've met someone I really like,"
she said. It was clear now. No proof, but Madison was doing something despicable. She liked the one person she shouldn't. I struggled to hide my trembling, angry hands. After parting with a happy Madison, I returned home, stunned. I couldn't let Thomas and Madison continue like this. It had to end. When I was able to move freely, I decided to visit my parents. That night, I told Thomas about going to my parents' house next week with Anthony and invited him. "I won't go. Got work." "You two go ahead." I knew Thomas wouldn't come. But his smile bothered me. He asked when I was leaving and returning. No interest in me, but he cared about when I'd be absent. I said I'd leave on Wednesday and return Sunday night.
"Got it. So you're returning Sunday night."
Thomas pulled out his mobile phone and started entering something in his schedule. I could tell why he was so keen on confirming our return date. I didn't miss the smirk on Thomas's face as he fiddled with his phone. The 5 days at my parents' house were wonderful. Anthony was extremely interested in farming, spending every day in the fields with Dad, enjoying playing in the dirt. On our way home,
"I had fun. I want to come back,"
Anthony kept saying. Thinking about the confrontation awaiting at home, I felt heavy-hearted. After I returned from my parents', Thomas suddenly announced he was going on a week-long business trip. Previously, his trips were at most 2 nights long. A week seemed suspiciously long. Seeing my puzzled face. Got a lot of clients to visit. Might even land a big contract. Thomas started talking about work, something he usually doesn't do. It sounded like he was trying to cover up guilt. Yet, he was in a great mood while packing, humming tunes. It looked more like preparing for a vacation than a business trip. Thomas left early in the morning. Even unusually saying, "I'm off." And he left. I heard the engine sound outside. He wouldn't use the car for a business trip. Feeling something was off, I stepped outside and saw our car parked in the garage. Back inside, I casually looked at the shoe rack and noticed Thomas's hiking shoes were missing. You don't pair hiking shoes with a suit. Checking the closet, his outdoor jacket was gone too. What kind of business trip was this? But still, Thomas being away for a week was a fact. I was relieved not seeing him. By then, I had no romantic feelings left for Thomas. A few days later, while cleaning the house after dropping Anthony at preschool, I received a call from an unknown number on my mobile phone. I answered with caution. It was from a hospital near my parents' house, located in the mountains. Shocked by the call, I rushed to the hospital. After picking up Anthony from preschool, we hurried to my parents. I explained briefly to Anthony in the car. Thomas had gotten lost while camping, slipped, and fell down a ravine. He was alive but suffered from multiple bruises and a severe open fracture in his leg. Luckily, he was rescued by local firefighters. It could have been life-threatening if not for the rescue. Initially, Anthony joked, "That's just like Mom." But when I told him about the severity, he became serious and worried. I left Anthony with my parents and headed to the hospital. Indeed, Thomas's business trip was a lie. I knew it, but still, I couldn't contain my anger. I felt too kind for bringing his clothes and other belongings. I also brought an important envelope with me. At the hospital, I learned Thomas was in intensive care. While waiting in the lobby, I heard painful screams. It seemed to be Thomas's voice. I was worried, but also thought it was divine punishment. After a while, a nurse guided me to the ICU. There, Thomas was crying and screaming in pain and fear. His neck was immobilized, and his body was wrapped in bandages. Anthony, seeing him, would probably exclaim,
"He looks like a mummy,"
making a big fuss. He was in such a pitiful state. As soon as Thomas saw me, he pleaded, "Please, take care of me."
"Why should I?"
I blurted out reflexively. Who does he think he is to ask this? When I broke my bone and was hospitalized. It's a no from me. Ask someone else. And who was it who said that? Then, the curtain of the next bed opened. And I screamed. There was Madison. Indeed, they had gone camping together. Madison was injured too. Not just her arms and legs, but her face and head were wrapped in bandages. Her eyes were terribly bruised. She couldn't move freely. Thomas, with his face immobilized and in pain, hadn't noticed the curtain open. He vented his frustration and pain at me.
"Do you even understand my pain? Don't just stand there, start taking care of me."
Thomas had fallen from a high place to the bottom of a valley. Of course, it would hurt. He was lucky to be alive.
"Like I could understand your pain."
I snapped back at Thomas. My patience had reached its limit. Thomas lied about a business trip to go camping with Madison, got into an accident, caused trouble for everyone. And now he's making a scene about being cared for.
It's your own responsibility. Be grateful you even got help.
I was done extending my hand to Thomas. Our marital relationship was already over. Today, here it all ends. Madison is here too, so it's perfect. Time to settle things. I decided to corner Thomas. I didn't care about his pain anymore. Justice was on my side.
Do they call camping a business trip at your company? Or were there clients at the campsite?
I didn't relent. I kept pressing Thomas.
Do you need to go to remote mountains for IT work and risk getting lost?
Thomas glared at me through tears, enduring the pain.
Shut up. It's none of your business. You went back to your parents' house, didn't you? Don't lecture me.
What an audacious claim. I had honestly said I was going to my parents. But Thomas had lied.
I didn't lie. Did you have a reason to lie?
Thomas just glared, unable to retort. I turned my back on the silent Thomas and looked down at Madison.
Did you follow Thomas and fall too?
Madison, grimacing in pain, spoke. Yes, I was trying to help Thomas and we both slipped and fell. So, your fun camping trip turned into a disaster. I snorted. It's not what you think, Elizabeth. It's a misunderstanding. Madison retorted in a small, pained voice. What misunderstanding? It all seemed to be the truth. I insisted on going camping with Thomas. I know this area well. There are hidden spots there. Madison was defending Thomas. Maybe she felt like a victim. Please, don't blame him. Thomas did nothing wrong. Madison was sobbing. The more she spoke, the less truthful it sounded, yet she continued. I didn't mean to hurt you, and I never expected it to turn into this. I'm really sorry. Madison seemed intoxicated by her own tears. Her words felt insincere. I should be the one crying. Thomas, noticing Madison's voice, interrupted our conversation. I just accompanied Madison for her hobby. I couldn't refuse your best friend's invitation. Thomas seemed determined not to admit any infidelity. So, the business trip was a lie, then. Thomas began to get flustered. Victim-playing Madison continued to defend Thomas. Both of you, stop it. This disgraceful affair will only bring more trouble if it continues. It seemed I would be the one to bring retribution upon Thomas and Madison. I was done with Madison's melodramatic charade. I took out an envelope from my bag, which I had brought from home. I spread out the photos from the envelope over Thomas and Madison's bed. Thomas and Madison were speechless. Their eyes wide. The photos showed Thomas and Madison entering a hotel arm in arm, and entering my house, hands intertwined. I had hired a detective when Max found Madison's scarf in our bed. They had been meeting not only during my visit to my parents, but also at other times. Thomas turned red with anger. How dare you do this? Spying and sneaking around. We just had dinner together while you were hospitalized. I almost laughed at Thomas's transparent overreaction. Meanwhile, Madison was still in tears. She covered her face with her hands, but I could see her peeking through the gaps. Maybe Madison was even worse. Thomas's tirade continued. This is fake. You must have fabricated it. He weakly swatted the photos away. You won't admit it, huh? I didn't want to use this, but... I sighed and pulled out an IC recorder from my bag. I placed this under the bed in our bedroom. Thomas and Madison swallowed hard. Sweat trickled down from the gaps in Thomas's bandages. I took my time looking at both of them, then pressed the play button. Don't tease me. I can't wait any longer. I pressed stop and turned to Madison. Do you want to hear the rest? Madison, losing her expression, shook her head side to side. It seemed she was beyond pretending to cry. There's plenty more. You spoke quite ill of me. Stop it. I'm sorry, just stop. My husband muttered softly. I asked Madison how long they had been involved. I was jealous of you. I failed at marriage, yet you lived in such a nice house, living luxuriously. And you were always complaining about Thomas. So, I thought I'd take him for myself. It all started from Madison's jealousy. She envied others. If I had Thomas, I could have a life like that too. What's wrong with that? Madison was defiant. Playing the victim. While listening to us, Thomas tried to snatch the IC recorder from me. Careful! Moving suddenly caused him intense pain. He lost his balance and fell from the bed. Thomas didn't make a sound. It seemed like he had fainted. Madison, shocked, looked at Thomas. I pressed the nurse call button. Nurses arrived quickly, and I was ushered out of the ICU. Once in the hallway, I realized my legs were shaking. I had been strong in confrontation, but I was really scared. During Thomas's hospitalization, I started divorce proceedings. With plenty of evidence of his infidelity, the lawyer said the divorce could be favorable for me. I would demand alimony and child support from Thomas. But that alone wasn't enough to punish Thomas. A thorough division of property was necessary. I sold the house, liquidating it into cash, divided the savings, and split stocks and investments. Thomas's parents came to apologize sincerely. They would oversee the alimony and child support payments. I promised Anthony could visit his grandparents occasionally. I filed a claim for alimony against Madison too. She would repay it little by little. Madison suffered an aftereffect to one leg from the accident. She couldn't walk without a cane. Thomas's condition was worse. He was close to needing a lower limb amputation. He became wheelchair-bound. The affair, disguised as a business trip, led to severe reprimands at work. He was demoted as a disciplinary action. Though he could have been dismissed, his past performance was considered. No one in the office sympathized with Thomas. He faced cold stares. Having lost the house, Thomas drained his savings on alimony and child support, now living in an old apartment. Without barrier-free access, he struggled with daily life. Recently, Thomas's dad reported to me. Thomas and Madison had broken up. For Madison, a wheelchair-bound Thomas was no longer desirable. Thomas and Madison never imagined things would turn out like this. They must be haunted by regret now, wishing they had refrained from lying and stepping over the line. But it's too late for regrets. Nothing can undo the past. Anthony and I decided to move back to my parents' house and live with them. With my parents around and Anthony starting at daycare, I found time for myself and got a job at a local real estate company. I'm vigorously studying to obtain several real estate qualifications. Anthony, loving the increased opportunities to be in nature, seems to be thoroughly enjoying life here. Every morning, before the sun rises, he goes to the fields with Dad to care for the crops. Anthony loves watching Dad operate the tiller. He must think of him as a hero. After helping in the fields, Anthony heads to daycare, plays to his heart's content, and returns home. Living in the countryside has made him sturdier and more sun-kissed compared to our urban life. It seems being surrounded by nature is better for Anthony. My parents are happy and smiling all day, enjoying the lively atmosphere. Max, the hero of this whole situation, seems to love it here too. He used to be reluctant to go for walks, but now he eagerly awaits them every morning. He loves being in the fields with Anthony and Dad, playing and getting muddy. Recently, during a family picnic by the river, Anthony suddenly stood up.
When I grow up, I want to be like Grandpa.
Dad, with a big smile, patted Anthony's head. Mom watched Anthony with joy in her eyes. I did what you could never do for Yosef. With those words, she showed off her newborn niece, Amelia, to me. Seeing me struggle for words, Yara wore a triumphant smile.
Doesn't she look adorable, just like Yara? I bet she'll be a model or an actress someday.
My betraying husband, Yosef, then added an insult to his remark. Time to head home, I guess. We've been able to show our happiness to the single Kayla over here, so it's been quite a satisfying today. Yosef exchanged a sly glance with Yara, both grinning deviously. What did they think of children? Were they just tools to flaunt in front of me, who couldn't have kids? Their attitude was pushing my anger to its limits. That's when I realized something. Wait, this child.
What is it? You're looking serious, all of a sudden.
Yosef responded, slightly caught off guard by my mutter. I couldn't help but find the situation amusing and began to chuckle. Gently stroking the baby's cheek, I replied. Such an angel, but her skin. As I revealed a certain truth, the smug looks on their faces froze instantly. My name is Kayla, 52 years old. My husband, Yosef, is an executive at a major trading company, whom I've supported as a housewife for many years. Yosef occasionally brings colleagues over to enjoy my cooking. Most of what comes out of Yosef's mouth are boasts about his younger days. His colleagues, brought along, would force a smile and endure his long stories, saying, "That's amazing." When they praise my cooking as delicious, Yosef smirks unpleasantly and says, "Well, that's about the only talent she has."
She's eating off my high salary, so she better do at least this much, or she's just useless.
And so he said, belittling me in front of his subordinates. I'd be lying if I said it didn't bother me, but I always reminded myself that I wasn't in a position to argue. It's been almost 30 years since we got married, but we've never had children. I always dreamed of having at least 2 kids after marriage. Despite spending time and money on fertility treatments, we were never blessed with children. I felt a sense of guilt for not being able to bear children. So, no matter how heartless Yosef's words were, I'd smile and think, I can endure this much. When Yosef talks about work, his eyes shine like a boy's, and I was happy to support him in any way I could. After all, I'm in love with Yosef. Apart from cooking, I had another talent. It was sewing, a hobby since my student days. I started making hand-sewn dolls, imitating my mother. They became quite popular among my friends. I used this skill to help with the household finances, making stuffed animals and charms. It might not be much compared to my husband's high salary. But I kept continuing with this small side job, hoping to at least treat Yosef to some nice meals. Our apartment becomes a weekend retreat for my niece Yara. Yara, my sister Megan's daughter, works in admin at a small trading company. She had a reason for her frequent visits. And that was to support a budding idol group.
Did you see Trevor on TV the other day? He looked so cool.
Yara arrived, fanning herself with a paper fan bearing a young man's face. Trevor, the man on the fan, is the leader of that idol group. They perform regularly at a club near our apartment every weekend, which is why Yara often stays over.
Yara, your collection seems to have grown again, hasn't it?
Each time Yara visited, her belongings in our room increased.
I mean, come on. When new merchandise comes out, I just have to have it. Plus, Trevor is the most popular, so it sells out right away.
I couldn't help but smile wryly at my niece's excitement before a performance. I understand the joy of buying your favorite idol's merchandise. I used to collect records of my favorite singers. But I wondered why she felt the need to bring all her new purchases to our house.
Isn't it hard to carry all that around? It's fine. I'll just store my stuff here.
Yara nonchalantly placed her bags in the corner of our bedroom.
It's just me and my husband, so we don't have much space, you know.
Ah, come on. It's fine. Uncle just comes home to sleep, right? Resigned, I had no choice but to accept my niece's whims. Oh, and I almost forgot. Mom made me bring this. With that, Yara pulled out a set of premium tea from her bag. My sister Megan and her husband occasionally sent gifts, and always made sure Yara brought something with her whenever she stayed over.
Oh my, they didn't need to.
After graduating high school, Megan worked far away until she was 30, then took over the family's variety store and married Kevin, an employee there. Since a large shopping center opened nearby, their business has suffered. So I always told her there's no need for such gifts.
I'm sorry Yara's been such a bother.
Megan would apologize over the phone, sounding guilty. However, Yara herself has become hard to ignore lately. She began entering our house even when we weren't home. It turns out Yosef has given her a spare key. She's here every week, might as well have one. Yosef had a soft spot for her.
Uncle, you're the best.
Yara would hug Yosef's arm, and he'd smile proudly.
All right then.
At first, I tried to be accommodating. But, 3 months later, a cash-filled envelope I kept in my bedroom drawer was missing.
When I asked Yara, she nonchalantly replied, "Sorry, Aunt Kayla. I borrowed it. I really wanted Trevor's new merchandise."
She looked at me with pleading eyes, but Yara has a job. She should be making enough to get by.
Wouldn't buying it with your own money bring you more joy?
Of course, I want to. But my salary isn't enough. Her casual words weighed on me. How much is she spending on this obsession? But it wasn't just about money. I noticed my skincare products were running out unusually fast. Since Yosef never used them, it had to be Yara. Confronted, she admitted it without hesitation. Sorry, Aunt Kayla. I just thought I'd use them since they were there. What did she mean since they were there? That cream was expensive. I frowned, and Yara pretended to shiver and rub her arms. Aunt Kayla, you're scary. Then Yosef would join in and laugh beside Yara. Come on, it's not a big deal.
Don't laugh, you should be scolding her.
Don't get mad. You look older when you frown like that. Yosef, usually not much of a joker, becomes chatty around Yara. I found particularly displeasing.
Anyway, I don't want you using our things without permission. You have a job, so buy your own stuff. If you continue using mine, I won't let you stay over again. I'll make sure your mom knows that too.
When I lectured Yara, Yosef turned red and shouted.
Enough already. The things you use aren't even earned by you, are they? I'm the one who's worked for all of it. I'm not living in luxury. I've been cutting corners, managing with what we have. I'm not splurging on hobbies like Yara. It's my money, I earned it. If I say Yara can use it, then she can use it however she wants.
Yosef's yelling made me want to cry. True, most of our income was from Yosef's work, so I couldn't argue further. Feeling abandoned with Yosef not on my side, I almost called Megan but stopped and put my phone away. Megan and her husband must be preoccupied with their struggling store. Complaining about my husband would just cause them unnecessary worry. Marital issues should be resolved between us. Days passed as I kept my concerns to myself. It was one cold Sunday morning during winter. A friend from my student days invited me out, so I decided to wear a fur coat I had never worn since purchase. I told Yosef about it beforehand.
I plan to be back by evening, but if I'm late, could you start dinner? Just reheat yesterday's leftovers in the microwave.
Don't worry about me. Take your time and enjoy yourself, he said, so smiling as he saw me off. Yosef, who usually belittles me in front of his subordinates, was kind and considerate when it was just us. I felt genuinely happy to be married to him. But as I arrived at the station, my friend called to cancel. Sorry. My husband's thrown out his back and can't move. I hate to do this, but can we reschedule? That's okay. Next time, you're treating me to fancy French cuisine. After jokingly dismissing my friend's repeated apologies over the phone, I wondered what to do, trying to come up with a plan for the day, but nothing particular came to mind. There's nothing else to do, I guess I'll go back home to Yosef. I stopped at the supermarket to pick up ingredients for lunch, thinking of making a warm stew for Yosef. As I opened the door, I was hit by a wave of heat and a scent of strong perfume. I noticed Yara's coat, a common sight on weekends.
Yara, are you here?
No answer. No one was in the living room. Strange, where could they be? I could sense someone was home, so they hadn't gone out. I stored the groceries and decided to look around the apartment. I could hear Yosef snoring from the bedroom. Was he taking a nap this early? I didn't understand much about Yosef's job, but being an executive must be tough during the week. So, I thought to let him rest on his rare day off. When I opened the bedroom door to see Yosef, I was met with a shocking sight. On our bed, usually shared by Yosef and me, lay Yosef and Yara, both naked and asleep. They were unaware of my return, lost in deep slumber. Yosef. I called out in a faint voice. More than anger, I felt a profound disappointment in my husband. After calling a few times, Yosef finally opened his heavy eyelids.
Kayla? You're back early.
He seemed groggy and closed his eyes again.
Yara, I'm home.
Yara, stretching and slowly sitting up, noticed me and shook Yosef to wake him up.
Uncle, wake up. We got caught.
She spoke with a mischievous grin, like a child found while playing hide and seek. Yosef sat up lazily, sighing, so, we're caught, huh, and yawned nonchalantly.
What's the meaning of this?
Confronted with this betrayal, I even forgot to express my anger. Well, as you see, we're involved, that's all. Both of you, get dressed right now. Surprisingly calm, I instructed the two. 2 hours later, my husband's parents and Megan's family arrived at my request. Sorry, Megan, Kevin, to bother you at this busy time. Don't worry about us. This is a serious matter. Megan comforted me, casting a cold glare at Yosef and Yara. What is the meaning of this? Explain yourself. She scolded at Yara, who only sighed and avoided eye contact. And to my surprise, she was checking the latest idol group updates on her phone. This is not the time for that. Megan scolded, snatching the phone away. Yara just clicked her tongue. Kayla, I'm so sorry for what our foolish son has done. Emily, my mother-in-law, tearfully apologized. Both in-laws were over 80, and it must have been hard for them to come in this cold. Do we really need to drag these old folks into this? Yosef complained. John, my father-in-law, slammed the table. Do you have no sense of responsibility? Yosef, after such a terrible betrayal to Kayla. You're unbelievable, Emily said in dismay. Yosef, how could this happen? Can you give me a satisfying explanation? No need to explain. Any man would prefer a young and cute girl like Yara over an old lady like her, right? As a man, I'm ashamed of you. John shouted at Yosef, who showed no remorse, his face turning red with anger. Yara is no better. How could you hurt Kayla, who's always been so kind to you? Where did we go wrong? Kevin, usually quiet, sighed in dismay. It wasn't Aunt Kayla who took care of me, it was Uncle Yosef. He buys me whatever I want. He even lets me use all the cosmetics and bags in this house. So different from Aunt Kayla, who's so petty. Yara, apologize to Kayla. No way. Why should I apologize to her? I don't need an apology. Even if you did, it wouldn't repair my relationship with Yosef. I spoke calmly. I reflected on the 30 years I had devoted to Yosef, enduring his belittling behavior because I believed he loved me. But his betrayal shattered everything I had held dear. Let's get a divorce. There's no other option. Is that what you want, Kayla? Megan asked, and I nodded firmly. Thanks, Kayla. Now we can marry openly, Yosef said, hugging Yara. They gazed at each other, unconcerned about the family's presence. On the way here, Dad and I decided, if you showed no remorse, we would disown you today. Megan said to Yara, her voice tinged with anger and sadness. That's fine. I don't need you guys anymore. I have Uncle Yosef now. Then it's decided. Don't ever cross our doorstep again, Kevin declared firmly. Yosef, we too have decided to disown you today. Megan's family and my in-laws apologized to me before leaving in a somber mood. Afterward, my divorce from Yosef was finalized. The divorce mediation, handled by lawyers, granted me compensation from both Yosef and Yara. Yosef, not wanting to burden Yara, paid both their shares in full. Within a month of our divorce, Yosef remarried Yara. I'm an executive at a major trading company. I can afford it. You can have all the marital assets, Yosef boasted, relinquishing his shared property. Despite his pride, he seemed to be struggling financially after paying both settlements. But he was a stranger to me now, so I focused on moving forward. I returned to my family home and began helping at Megan's variety store. Both my elderly parents were in a care facility. I took over the shop when Megan and her husband visited them. Sorry for always making you help out. It's me who should be grateful. I can't expect to be fed without doing anything. Megan and her husband always looked out for me after what I had gone through. Mostly out of concern for the mistake their daughter had made. Their feelings were so apparent that I felt more apologetic than they did. That summer, 3 years after I had returned home, Yosef and Yara unexpectedly appeared before me. Why are you here? I was stunned to see them smiling as they entered the shop. "It's been a while, Aunt Kayla," Yara greeted, holding a newborn baby in her arms. Seeing the baby, I was at a loss for words. Since Yara was holding the child, it must be her baby. That would mean the father is, of course, Yosef. Seeing my speechlessness, Yara wore a triumphant smile. "I did what you could never do for Yosef," she said, playing with the baby. She now called Yosef by his name, not uncle anymore. That reality shook me deeply. Then Megan and her husband returned. "What are you doing here after all this time? Is that how you greet your daughter who's just returned home after 3 years?" Yara retorted, showing off the baby.
"Look, Mom. Our child, Amelia. She's your first grandchild."
"Indeed. Congratulations," Megan replied emotionlessly, avoiding her daughter's gaze. Yara turned to me, smiling.
"I came to announce the birth of my daughter. Celebrate with us, Aunt Kayla. Say hello to Amelia." "Enough. What on earth are you thinking? Have you considered Kayla's feelings?" Kevin raised his voice, uncharacteristically angry. "Doesn't she look adorable, just like Yara? I bet she'll be a model or an actress someday,"
Yosef said lazily. Megan, unable to bear it, grabbed a broom to chase them away.
"Leave now. This isn't your place. You're disrupting our business, so go away."
"Time to leave. We've boasted enough happiness to the lonely, single Kayla. It's a quite satisfying day today," Yosef said, exchanging a conniving smile with Yara. What did they think of children? Using a child as a tool to flaunt and bask in their superiority? As I sadly watched the baby in Yara's arms, I realized something. Wait, this child.
"What is it? You're looking serious, all of a sudden,"
Yosef asked, puzzled. I suddenly found the situation amusing and started to chuckle.
"What's with the sudden laughter? Something wrong?"
Looks like Aunt Kayla's gone crazy from the shock. Gently stroking the baby's cheek, I replied. Like an angel, but her skin.
"Her skin? What about it?"
It looks so healthy. A beautiful tan, unlike Yosef's fair skin. Indeed, the baby's skin was a stark contrast to Yosef's paleness. What's wrong with that? None of my family or relatives have such tan skin. Is that strange? There are people in the world with tan skin. Oh, Yara once mentioned her great-grandfather was tan. That's genetics, right? Yosef said, acting knowledgeable. At that moment, my suspicions about Yara turned into certainty. That's impossible.
"What do you mean, impossible?"
Yosef questioned, suddenly anxious. I fetched an old family album from a closet in the room my grandparents used to use. Here, something I want you to see. Saying this, I showed a photo from the album. It's just a regular family photo. In the photo were me, Megan, our parents, and grandparents. It was taken in front of the store when my parents first started their variety store. This tall man on the right is my grandfather, Yara's great-grandfather. So? It's just a normal family photo. Don't you see? Look at my grandfather's skin. Fair-skinned, so what? That's normal, right? Yosef seemed to not grasp the reality. While he was confused, Yara's face turned pale. Enough. Amelia needs her milk. Let's go. Yara urged, tugging at Yosef's shirt. Unaware of the truth, Yosef started to leave, so I gave him another hint. There's no one with tan skin in my family, not just my grandfather. No relatives either.
Wait, does that mean?
Finally, Yosef seemed to understand what I was implying. That means the likelihood of you two having a tan child is 0. I said emphatically. Yosef started shaking. It's a waste of time being here. Let's go home. Yara hurried him, but Yosef, now understanding, didn't move. He turned to Yara, questioning her sternly.
What's this about? Our child shouldn't be tan. Then whose child is this? There's something else I want you to see.
I snatched Trevor's keychain from Yara's bag and showed it to Yosef. Trevor, known for being half Hispanic and half American, publicly acknowledged his mixed heritage. Yara had always admired Trevor's mixed heritage, often praising his appearance as cool.
This guy. He has the same skin color as Amelia.
Yara, initially frightened, quickly turned defiant and laughed.
Oops, looks like I got caught. That's right. Amelia isn't your child. She's mine and Trevor's. I seduced him, and he fell for me immediately.
Yara boastfully recounted her affair with Trevor.
You've been deceiving me?
Seriously, did you think a young and cute girl like me would be into an old guy like you? Hilarious. I approached you because you're an executive and seemed wealthy. With your money, I could buy lots of Trevor's merch and win him over.
So, I was just an ATM to you.
Yosef realized the truth and erupted in anger. Of course. I endured it for the money. Who would willingly share a bed with an old man like you? I let you live in a dream for 3 years. You should thank me.
What did you say?
Megan, my husband, and I were stunned as Yara and Yosef argued.
Enough, both of you. The baby is crying. Can't you hear her?
Megan shouted, stopping their quarrel.
I can't stand this anymore. You're not family, just strangers. Leave now.
Megan ushered Yara and Yosef out. Poor Amelia. That was my honest thought. 2 months later, Yosef visited me alone. Suddenly bowing deeply, he shamelessly begged, "Please, Kayla, give me another chance. I did a DNA test. There's no blood relation between me and Amelia. I was deceived."
Oh, really?
And?
I couldn't forgive Yara and Trevor for conspiring to make me raise their child. I stormed into Trevor's dressing room at a concert and demanded compensation.
Oh my. How challenging for you. I humored him, though I was indifferent. I had already learned about the scandal from the TV and magazines. Trevor impregnated a married fan and let the husband raise the child as his own. This scandal became widely known, bringing national attention to the obscure idol group. Facing nationwide criticism, Trevor's agency couldn't defend him and ended his contract, as reported by tabloid TV.
I saw it on TV. They're responsible for their actions. Right? They're terrible.
Yosef laughed, thinking I was agreeing with him. Moreover, the tabloids, not easing their investigative efforts, ruthlessly delved into the life of Trevor's partner, Yara. Astonishingly, it was revealed that Yara had been physically involved with multiple men besides Trevor, earning money from them. Apparently, her goal was to financially support Trevor. You see? I'm just another victim deceived by them. So please, let's start over again. I decline. As Yosef tearfully begged, I replied emotionlessly. I called Kevin from the back of the store to escort Yosef out.
If you keep bothering Kayla, we'll call the police.
Kevin's firm warning sent Yosef away, dejected. A month passed. Though the media frenzy had subsided, reports about Trevor and Yara continued. Trevor, ousted from the group, was reportedly exploiting Yara for money. Yara started working at a nightclub to make ends meet. Raising a child was proving difficult for Yara and her strained finances. In the end, feeling sorry for Amelia, Megan and her husband decided to take her in and raise her.
There's been a lot, but she's still our granddaughter.
That's right. The child is innocent. The couple cared for Amelia while managing their store. As for me, I left home to fulfill my dream of opening a sewing class. I couldn't just keep relying on Megan and her husband forever. Megan told me I could stay as long as I wanted, but when I mentioned that I had things I wanted to do, she happily encouraged me to pursue them. Amelia's first birthday was approaching. What should I gift her? Partially to see Amelia and partially to visit Megan and her husband, I still occasionally stop by the family store.